The following podcast is taken from a live broadcast on Inspire FM.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the book club show on Inspire 105.1 FM. My name is Imrana Mahmood and I have two brilliant guests on today's show, and we are talking about a very exciting project, that is happening in Bury Park. So on the show today, we are joined by Finn Kennedy and Titilola Dawudu, and I'm really excited to be interviewing them today. So just a very, very quick introduction to them. So Finn Kennedy is an award-winning playwright, producer and director of Applied Stories, a digital production company making place-based audio drama. Finn's play for theatre and radio are produced in the UK and internationally. He has a particular specialism in co-creating plays with young people and communities. Applied Stories designs site-specific audio drama experiences for museums, archives, schools, councils, and community groups, in the belief that stories can change the world by changing how we view one another. So that's a brilliant introduction to Finn Kennedy. We then are moving on to Titilola Dawudu, who is a writer and theatre and arts producer, currently working with Clean Break and the Royal Shakespeare Company. She's also a trustee for Beyond Face and the National Student Drama Festival and chair of Theatre Centre. And Titilola consults for organisations in the arts and cultural sector, as well as the education sector, working with race equality networks, and provides workshops and courses in leadership. So thank you so much to both of you for joining me on the show today. I think what would be a really good place to start is the project that you are now currently working on, which is what we'll be talking about today, which is Museum of Stories. So Finn, if I come over to you, good morning, first of all, and thank you for joining us. And yeah, if you can just give our listeners a bit of background into the project.
Sure. It's a pleasure, Imrana. Thanks for having us on. So Museum of Stories is a new community-led audio walk down Dunstable Road. It will eventually be on a geolocated app with pins on a map showing where audio stories can be found up and down the high street. The stories are being sourced via an open call to communities in the area. We have a phone line which people can ring, which is a 24/7 voicemail, and they can describe their story. The number to call is 01582 250 444. Between the beginning and the end, there's a whole load of work that we're going to be doing with a selection of people who call that number. We're going to invite them to a story workshop. I'm being joined by two brilliant artistic collaborators, Titi Dawudu, who's on the call today, and Shamiza Rashid. And we will be working with the communities who ring up and offer their stories to polish them up into a really professional script, and then working with those community voices to record those scripts and augment them with sound effects and music, and then we'll upload them to this app and have a public launch event in September. We're going to be part of the Heritage Open Days week, which Luton Borough Council's Heritage Department runs every week in September, launching on the 7th. And then the walk itself will remain online for a couple of months until the end of October. We'll assess how it's all gone, and then we might try and fundraise to do more, because the nice thing about a project like this is once you've built that digital infrastructure, it's kind of there indefinitely, and you can add to it with more stories over time if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that sounds amazing, and in terms of the potential and the legacy as well. And I'm really interested actually, because I guess this project, it's a Museum of Stories. You're utilizing what I would say is a very traditional approach to collecting the stories, which is like you pick up the phone and you kind of leave a voicemail. But at the same time, you know, you've spoken about the fact that there's a potential for it to develop into kind of a geolocation type of walk. And I guess I'm interested where that ideas come from, you know, because there's a fusion of different art forms. And yeah, I mean, and what could you describe a little bit of what that experience would potentially be like, you know, the walk, I think specifically?
Yeah, sure. So I'm from a theatre background. I'm a playwright, which is extremely analogue. But in the last couple of years, I've made a sidestep into digital production with Applied Stories. Alongside my theatre work, actually, I always wrote for radio, mostly Radio 4, and I always loved it and loved the creative possibilities of it, because you can go anywhere in audio. You can go down phone lines and pop up in other countries, in and out of characters' heads, back in time. And I've always been interested in audio that's specifically designed to be experienced in a certain location. There's been a whole revolution in the past 10, 12 years going on about in how people listen to audio with podcasting. Everyone listens now through headphones, and that is a much more one-to-one and intimate relationship with an audience as a storyteller and a dramatist. It's not sat in an auditorium with 200 people. It feels very personal. And I find that really artistically exciting. I think that's a really emotionally powerful tool to have as a storyteller. And the reason for taking it out into the world is because in urban environments, in kind of high density areas of high density living, there's all these different lived experiences and histories and cultures and personalities rubbing up against each other. But there's very few forums where we can actually engage with one another in a meaningful way, in kind of encounter one another, or walk a mile in someone else's shoes. Stories and storytelling have always been a great way to do that, but if you add actual literal walking into it as well, then I think that takes it to another level. So what I'm interested in doing with a project like this is kind of mapping an area through its stories. So the idea of Museum of Stories is we're not building a bricks and mortar museum. The museum's actually already there. It's Dunstable Road. That's the gallery. And the exhibits are going to be these audio stories, which then augment that walk down the road and give you an insight into the people, past and present, who've lived there, and some of their imaginative worlds and lived experience. And I hope that taken together, it'll offer a sort of slice of life. Maybe also looking into the history of the area, because we had a few historical stories come through in the pilot, which was really interesting. There'll be about 12 of these little sort of 3 to 5 minute stories, and you don't have to do them all in one go. There's no particular order to do them in. You could go and do a couple, have a cup of tea, go and do the rest, break for lunch, even go off and come and do the rest another day. So the idea is it's really there for anyone and everyone to experience, and to get a sense of place through the tools that this new technology offers us, which is quite a simple idea, really. But as you say, I'm wanting to take a traditional art form out into the world, and give the audience a slightly different experience, really, to how you normally experience stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I absolutely love the concept. And I know, people talk a lot about, for example, in theatre, the idea of breaking the fourth wall and kind of, and, it sounds so accessible, to whichever communities and whatever kind of background to really be able to come into that space. And, and I love what you said about the road itself, being the kind of, the gallery, so to speak. So that's amazing. So Titilola, coming to you, could you explain a little bit on what is your kind of involvement with the project, a little bit of your own kind of journey to the work that you're doing currently?
Yes, absolutely. Good morning, Imrana. I am a writer. Well, I actually call myself a storyteller, because I think that's quite broad, and I like the concept of storytelling in different forms. And Finn and I have worked together for actually quite a long time. Finn is actually going on 9 years. We met in 2014. And Finn was a guest lecturer at a university I was studying in, and we just kind of developed a relationship and co-created Hear Me Now together, which is an audition monologue book, which I can go on to speak about. And literally, Finn will ask me anything, I'll say, yeah, sure, because I'm really excited about the types of things that Finn does, and the different breadths of different types of storytelling I'm interested in. And what I love about Museum of Stories is the fact that just how much it connects with the community, and how much storytelling is from other people. And it just reminds me of how Hear Me Now was. It wasn't just me as a writer, kind of like just stories, it was collaboration. And I really, really love that. I'm such a big collaborator. I love collaborating with people. I love taking people on a journey. They take me on a journey, and that's what's really great about Museum of Stories. And I'm excited by not actually knowing what the stories are going to be. I like that element of, anything could happen, anything could be told to us. And I know when Finn did it before, he had really great people tell him stories about the area, about themselves, and just completely unexpected.
Yeah, no, and I think that's really wonderful, because especially what you said about you kind of prefer to call yourself a storyteller, because there's like so much weight in that, not to say that saying a writer isn't as much, but definitely when we think about kind of, I think historically, when we think about different communities and the way kind of all the stories being passed down generation from generation, is kind of like trying to carry that forward, which I think is really important to almost keep alive, especially I think nowadays in terms of like the age of social media, etc. And you mentioned that you've written an anthology which is called Hear Me Now, which is basically a series of monologues. My first thing would be really because I remember the first time I heard the word monologue when I came into the arts, and I was like, I actually don't quite understand what that is, and it was really powerful for me when I really kind of grasped what that concept is. So could we just start there, and then you can talk a little bit about what the anthology is, and I guess how it can be used.
Yes, of course. Yeah. So a monologue is like a long speech, really, by an actor or performer in a play or a production or a film even. And it's just like a theatrical element and a different way to tell a story or part of that story. And what with Hear Me Now is it started really when I used to write audition monologues for actor friends, auditioning for like drama schools, and they were Black, South Asian, East Asian actors who were like, I can't actually find really great audition monologues that really speak to me. And so that was like many years ago. And fast forward, I think it was around 2016, Tamasha, where Finn Kennedy used to work, we had the same idea around what would it look like if we brought new monologues into the canon of what's already out there, like completely bespoke. And we spoke to some actors and writers, and it was like, actually, writers write monologues, and we write monologues for for actors. There's a lot of monologues that actors use in auditions are taken from existing plays. But it was like, but what would it be like to create new ones? But we hear from the actors, what would the actor like to perform? And so we ran a series of workshops, actually, and where the writers literally asked the actors, what type of characters they would like to play. The writers went away and wrote like 3-minute audition speeches, and we did a pilot to an audience just to get a feeling, a sense of if this was anything really, and that was quite successful. And then I did a funding bid, created this book with Tamasha and some really incredible actors and writers. So that was the first book, and that was published in 2018. And then we did a second book that was published last year. So there's 2 volumes now of these monologues. So the first book has 87 monologues, all brand new, bespoke, and the second book has 100. So it's just really exciting to have that type of resource out there for actors that never really saw themselves.
Yeah, and that's wonderful. I mean, I had no idea that there were so many. That's fantastic. And thank you, I guess, for putting the work in, and to everyone that you worked with to kind of make it happen. And thank you for obviously mentioning Tamasha as well, and obviously Finn, the work that you've done there. So then coming back to the project itself in terms of Museum of Stories. Now, I've seen the kind of the promo poster. I'm sorry, I don't know what to maybe call it, the graphic, and I absolutely love it. So obviously you've got many people who maybe go to Dunstable Road or go to Bury Park will know about Nadine Plaza, and it being quite an iconic, I think, kind of image in the poster. You've then got like the QR code. You've obviously got the phone number, Finn, which you mentioned earlier. So it says call the Museum of Stories hotline now on 01582 250 and then 444. So could you talk a little bit maybe about the graphic itself and how that came to being? And then is the phone number already active? So once the listeners can they literally call in, and what can they expect in terms of that phone call? So that question for you, Finn.
Yeah, sure. So for the image, we found a brilliant Luton-based designer called Ed Smith, who's a Berry Park local, who popped out and took that shot early one morning so there's less traffic on the road. And then he does his amazing graphic design thing with it, where he makes it all look almost like a movie poster. It's not exactly sepia, it's coloured, but he's kind of played around with the colours and the lines, and it looks like it's a bit sort of more timeless or classic. And I really loved his style. It was really just celebrating the town that he saw around him, Luton as it looks, and I approached him about designing our poster. He loved the idea of it. It's his local stomping ground, and he even grew up there. So he had a great time designing that for us, and we're really pleased with it. Yes, the phone number is open as of now. It's actually staying open till the end of April. So people have got a bit of time to think about what they might call up about. I'd encourage anyone who's thinking of doing so to go to museumofstories.co.uk. There's all the information about the project there, including some sound files from the pilot. A year ago, we've partnered with, and we're still partnering with, Revolution Arts, a local company, who got this off the ground a year ago with a small seed commission to test the idea out. And so there's a few pieces of audio which we made, which are on the website there, so people can have a listen, including actually a montage of voicemails to the original phone line a year ago. So you can hear a snapshot of the kinds of things people were ringing up about. It was amazing, really. I was astonished by the range of material that we got and how detailed it was and how good quality. I felt really lucky. We had everything from a local historian telling us about how when Berry Park was founded by the Marquis of Bute, selling off his lands in the 18th century. We had a World War II story, a V2 rocket dropped on Berry Park Post Office in 1944. We had stories from the community tensions in the 80s, a former Asian youth activist who mobilised to protect the mosque from National Front marches. We had a retired businesswoman calling and telling us about Berry Park in the 60s when it was posh. And she got her first set of glasses age 7 at Alders Opticians, which is still there, historic local business. We had an ex-soldier and former Luton FC fan who had a bit of a checkered past, but who completely changed his views about Islam and Muslims after spending time in the army abroad, and now does anti-radicalisation work with young white lads at risk of far-right radicalisation. And we had a ghost story. My favourite one, actually, was a ghost story from Alders Opticians itself. They've got a little girl that they see around Christmas time, and all the staff have got stories about her. And this was just from a pilot. So I'm so excited to see, now that we've got the full funding to make the actual walk, what else we get through keeping the phone line open for longer. People can call up with anything they want, really. There's no brief. I mean, there is a bit of small print on the website about what we might do with the material, so I'd encourage people to read that. But basically, we can work with people to polish their stories up. It doesn't need to be completely polished and finished. And I'm really pleased to say we can accept stories in languages other than English as well. We've got translation services in the budget. So we're hoping for a really interesting range this time around.
Yeah, and that's really crucial. And obviously, thank you for mentioning that. I mean, even on the graphic itself, I can see that you've got kind of, I think there's Urdu and am I right?
Yes.
It might be Polish, and is that
Polish, Bengali?
Yes. Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. And it's, again, I think it's about when we talk about the arts and we talk about, and Titilola kind of mentioned this, when you don't see yourself represented and, automatically sometimes it kind of feels that there's a barrier there. So actually, maybe that could be the next question for you, Titilola, because obviously you mentioned, you've written the monologues for Hear Me Now, and the idea is for it to be accessible for I guess you could say creatives or people from the global majority. Do you think, I guess there's two parts to this question, that the change that is needed in terms of representation, is that, happening at a pace, do you think it is good? Do you think it needs more improvement? And how do you think the Museum of Stories specifically will be able to kind of be kind of a catalyst for that?
Yeah, I do. You know what? I feel like there's a shift. I know there's a shift in myself and how, as a storyteller and a practitioner, is that for a long time we've been trying to, say we want to be in the room at the table, and it's almost like convincing people why we should be there. And I've kind of I don't want to kind of think that way anymore. And it's like, you know what, we're going to celebrate ourselves despite the industry sometimes still having to catch up, and it's like, how I see Museum of Stories is that, you know what, this is also seen as a celebration of new stories coming to light. And I really hope that there will be a lot of diverse type of stories that will come out. And I think the very fact that, myself as a Black woman that's involved, and do you know what I mean, that will hopefully, when people see that it was like, yeah, they see me, okay, this is something that I can be a part of because I see somebody represented in this project. And I do think there's a shift. I think sometimes it's slow and people aren't used to change and people don't love change, but when you take people on a journey, when you say, come with me, rather than, as I said, trying to convince people all the time, like I don't like that approach. I'm not going to convince somebody why I should, tell my stories, or I should, whatever. I'm going to tell my stories. I want to encourage other people to tell their stories, and that's what will make a change in people that still see our type of work or risky or whatever. So for me, it's like we have stories for days. That's why I call myself a storyteller, because it's actually, if I think about how my ancestors told stories orally, and it was passed on. It wasn't actually written down. And I just think that there are so many different ways to tell stories, so many ways to show those stories and tell them and celebrate them. And for me, that's what it's all about. It's about, we're going to do this anyway. We're going to tell our stories anyway. I encourage all the community to get involved, so many different people, because when we have such a diverse range of voices, it just makes for a better community. It makes for a better project. It makes for a better, experience for our audience. So yeah, for me, there's a change, absolutely. And as I said, personally for myself, it's a positive way of kind of like saying, hello, I should be here. Hello, it's just like, yeah, I'm going to keep on telling my stories. If you want to listen, great. If you don't, hey, it's not for you.
Yeah. No, and I think that approach it makes so much sense. And actually, I think this might be really, really brilliant time to play, because I do think that we do have a bit of a teaser. So I think we'll just play that in a moment. It's a very short teaser.
Here we are. Jet black frame, -5 in both eyes.
Thick lenses.
It's a strong prescription.
Can I put them on?
Of course you can.
Carefully. I can see. Mum, I can see. Oh my lord. How do I look? So grown up.
Check the mirror.
Are the frames too thick? You look like a beautiful young woman.
So that was the amazing teaser for Museum of Stories, Bury Park. So Finn, coming back to you in terms of the project as a whole, you mentioned obviously we know that there's obviously a phone number that people are going to call to share their stories. My question really is, why Bury Park? I mean, I might have mentioned or asked you the same thing the last time I interviewed you about the project, but yeah, I guess I'm just really interested to know, what is it about, because we've talked about kind of place and the importance of that, and even within the arts there is that kind of focus at the moment about place-based work. So yeah, just out of curiosity.
Yeah, well, lots of reasons, really. I've been coming to Luton for many years because in my previous job running a touring theatre company, we used to tour shows into the Hat Factory. So I got to know Luton a little bit that way. I live fairly nearby, actually, in St Albans as well. And through that work, I got to know Shamiza Rashid, who I'm working with on this. In fact, I supported, or Tamasha supported her in her show at the Hat Factory, Mother Monologues, Resisting Austerity. And we really hit it off. And just like with Titi, when you found a great collaborator, and we just always wanted to work together. And over sort of several years of conversations, with this idea kind of emerged because I did an audio walking tour of Brick Lane in East London as one of the last things I did in my previous job, and Shamiza and some other Luton collaborators came to experience it, and I was really interested in doing something similar in Luton. We got in touch with Revolution Arts, who are one of the main arts organisations in town, who have a particular focus on Bury Park. And they got me over and gave me a walking tour, showed me around. And I knew the centre of Luton, but not Bury Park so much. And I was amazed, really, by all sorts of things. I suppose what a thriving, bustling community it is. I loved how much is compacted into a small area. It's perfect for a walking tour because it's so busy. There's so many shops and homes and people. You've got the football ground right there in this. I know it's moving, but historically this ground where to go into it, you even have to walk through terrace houses, like it's literally built into the lived environment. I find that really interesting. You've got the mosque there, which in the 80s was the biggest new built mosque in Europe. And the main thing that struck me actually about Dunstable Road in particular, and Bury Park Road, is there's no chain stores. It's really rare to have that these days on a British high street. It's all independent businesses, and that just seemed like worth celebrating, but also a nice way to be able to reach out to people, because it's quite hard to reach out to managers of chain stores who just refer you to head office. But if you can literally walk down and speak to the manager right there, who's also the owner, I mean, that's what happened with Alders, the opticians. I popped in to tell them what we were up to, and Dr. Alvey's called the new owner. He was so excited and so welcoming. He sort of sees himself as like a custodian of that business. He took me into his back room. He's got like pictures up historically of Alders through the ages, loads of old ophthalmic equipment. It's almost like a museum. And I don't think you get that on many high streets, really. So all of that just seemed like a really exciting place to make work. And it's just super diversity, of course, which is always exciting in the arts.
Yeah, and I really like what you said about the fact that it's kind of a celebration. And I think, sometimes we don't always get to do that. So that's a really wonderful way of putting it. So we are approaching the end of the first half of the show. And you can grab yourselves maybe a tea and a couple of biscuits, and we will be back in a few moments. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, this is Atif Nawaz. Listen to Inspire FM shows in your time by heading over to inspirefm.org or listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Book Club show on Inspire 105.1 FM. My name is Imrana Mahmood, and on today's show we are talking about the Museum of Stories, Bury Park, and we are speaking to two wonderful guests. We have Finn Kennedy, who's an award-winning playwright, producer and director of Applied Stories, and we are also speaking with Titilola Dawudu, who is a writer and theatre and arts producer. And in the first half of the show we were talking a little bit about what Museum of Stories is about. The fact that there is an invitation to the community to phone up, leave a story. It could be anything that you want, anything which you find interesting or that you really, really want to kind of share with the world and kind of really. I think the way Finn put it was really lovely, that we're really celebrating people's stories and doing it in a way which is through creativity and through the arts. Now, in this second half of the show, what I wanted to do was go into a little bit more detail about the process of what this project involves. So coming back to you, Finn. So obviously we explained that people are going to be phoning this number, they're going to be leaving a voicemail. And then what is this actual recording process going to be for these stories then?
Yeah, so Titi and me and Shamizo will be going through the messages we receive and reaching out to a selection of them and inviting them to come along to a 2-hour story workshop, which will be run by the three of us, which will essentially be a kind of introduction to the building blocks of storytelling. So beginning, middle, end, how to make it work for a single voice, because that's probably the form that we're going to be relying on, a bit like the monologues that Titi spoke about earlier. And in that workshop, by the end of that workshop, we will have paired up each community contributor with one of the writers, and we'll take about 3 each. And then that relationship will continue for a few more weeks, one-to-one, probably over Zoom, for each writer to work up in collaboration with the contributor their script. We're quite open to how the scripts get written. If people just want to kind of talk to their writer about their material and then the writer goes away and drafts something and brings it back for approval, we can do that. Or if people want to take more of an active role, they could co-write it with their writer, or even lead on writing it themselves and then get some notes from their writer on how to polish it up. So we can really cater for however people want to go about it. But the idea is that the contributor will remain attached to that story. We won't be bringing in actors at any point to play them. We'd like these contributors to actually perform their story, which we'll record professionally in a recording studio locally. We'll have a professional director in the room to support them with delivering the best performances that they can. And then I'll be the sound editor. I'll take it all away and mix them together with some sound effects and music. We might be able to bring some little scenes to life with more than one voice if there's little cameo parts, because we'll have about 12 different community voices recording together, so they might be able to appear in one another's. But mostly what we're looking for is quite short, sweet, punchy, impactful, kind of 3 to 5 minute single voice stories which surprise, delight, entertain us, and perhaps tell us something new about the place that we thought we knew. So it's very much a co-creation project, and for me artistically, I'm really interested in accents and dialect and how much that locates you in a place. So using real people's accents, this is why I don't use actors so much, is really part of the sort of fabric and beauty of the artistic piece, really. That sense that you can become immersed in for the duration of the walk in the voices that inhabit that area, is the idea. So yeah, I hope it will be a really enjoyable creative experience. We've even got a little bit of money in the budget to pay people for their time to record with us. I believe in acknowledging people's time and contributions and creativity in that way. Because on projects like this, we're all artists. That's how I see it. It's not the core artistic team kind of taking material away and doing their thing. It's very much about, we couldn't do it without you guys, and vice versa. And I hope that we'll produce something together that everyone can take real ownership of, and feel really proud of, and ideally invite all their friends to, because there'll be the chance to do that for a good couple of months while it's online.
Yes, exactly. And I, you've mentioned kind of co-creation, and I think that importance of co-ownership as well. I guess my one question that comes to mind is, I think it's lovely what you said about, everyone kind of being an artist, especially, when it will come to working together on this project. But what if there's someone, listening now who thinks, oh yeah, I have a story I really like to tell, but I'm not an artist, or I don't really know how to write or write a script, for example. Like what kind of nudge would you give them to kind of get involved?
Yeah, so I guess if you've got you've got good material, but it's about how do you express it or write it up. Don't worry about that too much. We can work with the raw building blocks of the events of a story. I mean, as long as it's got something that makes it stand out to us, that is surprising or poignant or whatever it might be. I would encourage people to kind of think a bit about what they want to say before they ring up, because what's less helpful to us is if people ring up and go, oh yeah, I've got loads of stories, give me a ring, which sometimes happens. And it's like, okay, well, I've got loads of these messages, I don't know who to ring and what they've got for me. So think about where the story starts, your kind of role in it as well, because you will probably be a character in this story, even if it's just the narrator. And beginning, middle, and end. It's really, we all know how to tell a story because we're all kind of raised on them from childhood. But I think the key things really are about how it affected you. How did it impact you? What happened? The change in you, or something that you realized. Maybe it was a moment in your life where you had a realization or a coming of age moment, or you became independent for the first time, or audiences are really interested in empathy. And if I was in your position, how would I feel? So have a think about the feelings and effects that the story had on you. We do have a family-friendly content policy. This is going to be accessible by anyone, so we want to make it kind of 10 plus, really. So we can. I'm open to working with kind of grittier material if necessary, but we're keen to keep it celebratory, and that there's a sense of overcoming adversity if adversity does feature, because one of the things we want to do with a project like this is just sort of slightly push back against the general perception of Luton in the press, which isn't always positive, and actually to kind of go, do you know what, there's all this beauty and truth here, as well as all the rest of the difficulties of life. So going on the museumofstories.co.uk page will give them a sense of the project, and you can listen to some of the previous stories, but don't worry too much if you don't feel like a writer or an artist. This is a partnered project, so you can if you want, you can tell your story to a writer, and we can go away and write it for you, and then kind of be your writer, if you know what I mean, and come back with drafts, and you can give us notes on how you'd like to change it. So all of that can be accommodated.
Yeah, no, thank you for the insight. And yeah, I think it's such a wonderful opportunity, really. And I mean, I'd say from maybe my own perspective, as somebody who came into the arts quite late, I mean, I remember how apprehensive, I used to feel that, I'm in a space, I kind of don't have, maybe you could say, like formal qualifications, and it can be quite a little bit daunting, but actually, the fact that as part of Museum of Stories, the fact that you have Titilola, the fact that you've got Shemiza, obviously yourself, you're working together as a team. And I think once you have that support and, you've got that infrastructure, it kind of really helps, and you can kind of, and you feel much more comfortable in your own skin and be able to share, I think is really
and with one another. We want the contributors to meet each other and hear each other's stories. That's one of the things that will happen in the first workshop, so that there's a sense of being part of the whole, and how those different stories hang together, because we want to choose 12 that are really different and distinct from one another, that are representative, and that taken together really feel like they're a community of stories, that they somehow capture that bustling community that created them.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, because it's going to be an entity in itself, which is really lovely, and kind of reminds me actually what Titilola was saying about the fact that it's not just you taking maybe the contributors on a journey, it's a journey for yourselves as well, because obviously that's what happens when you kind of exchange stories and you exchange experiences. It makes it so kind of beautiful. This might be actually a really good moment to play. I know there is a montage which has been created from kind of building from the last project. So I think it'll be a really wonderful treat for our listeners to hear. So we are just going to play that.
Thank you for calling Museum of Stories, Bury Park, Luton. Please leave your story after the tone.
My story is about the events that took place outside the newly built mosque on Westbourne Road on the 11th of July, 1981.
This is my kind of story. I grew up in Luton. In my year, the school I went to, there was only 3 white kids in our year, and it was predominantly Muslim in our year. It was my story.
May is my grandmother. She wasn't sure about leaving Bury Park Post Office unattended. She'd received a call from Denby School. One of her daughters was taken ill.
This was a time in Luton and Bury Park, the 50s to the 70s, where as young people, you wouldn't be seen dead eating in the streets.
I just would like to share a story today about an aspect of Bury Park's history.
The rumours were that racist skinheads from the National Front and British Movement were going to come in and attack the shops and attack the mosque.
My story is about how a white kid from Luton grew up with racial tension, followed influence of others.
At 9:50 a.m. on Monday, November the 6th, 1944, a single V-2 rocket detonated in the Comma Car Factory canteen in the space between Curzon Road and Biscuit Road, killing 19 people, injuring 196 and damaging 1,524 houses.
Alders is there. Alders is the first opticians who gave me my first pair of glasses, and I've got a photo of me in those glasses at age 7. And Alders is still there now.
In the late 60s, a Jewish butcher had actually saved his father from a racist attack in Bury Park. He grabbed him by the neck and hid him under his tail for 2 hours until the skinheads had left Bury Park.
How young people galvanised themselves to defend their community, the characters involved, what they did on that night, and what the aftermath was.
Now I work with mosques that understanding cultures and building those bridges is important within society, and how you change perception is by understanding and education.
Museum of Stories.
Museum of Stories.
Museum of Stories.
museumofstories.co.uk.
So that was the wonderful montage of Museum of Stories, Bury Park, to give our listeners a bit of a taste of what the project is about, which is really, really excellent. I'm so glad we were able to hear that. I'm going to come up with actually just bouncing off something that Finn said just before we played that. So Titilola, it's a question to you. Might be putting you on the spot a little bit, but Finn mentioned the fact that Luton generally does get quite bad press. It's just constant kind of sensationalism in terms of the media and the way the town's portrayed. I mean, I know you might not have had a chance yet maybe to work in Luton too much, but what is it that maybe your own perceptions of the town, and how do you think that a project like this can kind of help that, obviously within the Luton context, but it could be in any place really.
You know what?
Is that for me?
Oh, I'm going to go to Titi first.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, please.
Yeah.
You know what, things like that I don't really listen out for. I'm from before I actually based in Coventry now, and Coventry has its own reputation and people say what they like about Coventry. I'm from South London in Croydon, and again the same types of thing. So if Luton has had a bad rap, I think that makes even more for great stories to come out of it, to be honest, and a chance for people to really and for us to actually give a platform to people, to actually people, because when we hear about reputations of a place or whatever, we forget that they're human beings, right? So for me, this will be a perfect opportunity to speak to people, hear their stories, and really shine a really positive light on Luton actually, and really hear the stories of the people that make up that place, rather than just what people think that they may know. So let's bring it on. I'm welcoming, let's speak to the community. Let's really get to the heart of this wonderful place.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think it's a perfect answer. So thank you for that. And I guess I think just kind of going on, with some of the conversations we've already had when we're talking about the arts and the fact that the project itself is called Museum of Stories. I mean, there's a part of me that thinks, okay, the word museum, there's certain connotations when it comes to that. I think Finn's kind of really wonderfully described actually why this is a little bit different. But Titilola, maybe from your perspective though, how the fact that it's a museum of stories, I mean, it could have been maybe something different, or so what is your kind of perspective about that, and again the reason you wanted to be kind of involved?
I think 100% the word museum could be a barrier, absolutely, possibly, but I think the way I see it is like a treasure trove. Like anytime I've gone to a museum, and especially when I take different types of community and young people to museums and say like, yes, this actual building maybe feels like it's not for you, but once you step inside, it's a treasure trove. But also we can look at another way, that it doesn't have to kind of feel like it's a place. A museum could be anywhere. It could be a park, you could wherever you wander around in your town or city, it's a collection. Museums, it houses collections of things, and these are collections of stories. And if we kind of like maybe reimagine what a museum could be, hopefully that will, it doesn't have to be what we traditionally think it is. And I from what I said earlier around kind of like representation, it's like, if I kind of feel like what's really great about like the work that Finn does and why I'm involved and all the work that I do, actually, it is really reimagining what we think is the mainstream. It's really reimagining storytelling, reimagining theatre. Theatre is not a place that you go to. It's something that you experience. And I'm really hoping that people get that from Museum Stories in this project as well.
Yeah, and I think you've summed that up in such a brilliant way, the idea of reimagining, I guess redefining to some extent as well. So hopefully that'll give a bit of an idea. And yeah, and if it is a potential barrier, it probably isn't, but I think it was just maybe more from my perspective. I was thinking that, and again, I think even when we're working within the arts or any sort of projects, it's really good to kind of, I guess, have that introspection and to interrogate and just, constantly renew the intention, I think is really important. Finn, how about yourself? Did you want to add anything to that question?
Titi describes it all so brilliantly. So not really, but I suppose we don't have the bricks and mortar of a real museum, which is often like a physical barrier stepping into those intimidating buildings. It's a virtual museum, of course. But what we do have in common with museums is that the stuff in there has been chosen, it's been curated, and it's been displayed because it's worth looking at and thinking about in some way. So I hope that we'll, with this project, remove some of the physical barriers, but keep that sense of a special collection that you're able to kind of engage with, to think about, to feel, and ideally to see that space anew. Because where I think we do part company with traditional museums is that we're interested in making people think and feel differently about the space that they're in. Exhibits in the British Museum or whatever aren't really designed to do that, but ours really is. It's about, look at this place around you, feel more connected to it, feel like you've had an experience from someone else's perspective. So creating empathy and understanding is really at the heart of our museum, and I hope that will come through.
Yes, definitely. And you mentioned earlier on that obviously you're collecting these stories, you then have a workshop, and contributors will get support to kind of make it into script and an actual almost I guess I was going to say performance piece, but obviously it's all audio. So then what will the next step, like in terms of timing, like when is this all happening? When will the different communities be able to really engage and then come together and celebrate those stories as a collective?
Yeah.
So just a little bit with the timeline, I guess.
Good question. So the phone line is open till the end of April, and then we'll start the workshop process in May, and the script development process, which will run throughout May and June, and then at the start of July we'll record over 2 days. And then we'll do the editing and sound design over July. And then August, I'll be uploading and testing out the app. We might be working with some students from Beds Uni to help test it for us. And that's all with a view to the main public launch, which will be from the 7th of September as part of Heritage Open Days Week, run by the Council's Heritage Department. And then the walk itself will remain online and free for anybody to do for the whole of September and October. And then we'll probably retire it over the winter, just because you have to pay to keep it online, and with the weather changing, it's not so ideal. But so it'll probably be seasonal. When spring comes next year, we'll put it back online, and maybe if we've had a positive response and can raise more money, maybe even add a new selection of stories to it.
So actually that kind of takes me to my next question. What is the potential then of this project? Is the hope that you could develop this across the town? I mean, I know you mentioned I think you've already done one, did you say Brick Lane?
Yeah, it was a slightly different project, but it was an audio walk, so yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I love an audio walk, and I think you can literally do them anywhere. I mean, with this particular one, you do need a suitable high street, or at least busy street. It would be harder to do it not impossible, but on a residential street. But I think the amount of different types of, because you've got businesses and homes and places of worship and community centres all within a really small distance of each other in Bury Park. Yeah, it will be something that you can kind of have a legacy in that it will sort of stay there for people to experience the area through it. And then I hope we will get asked to do it elsewhere. I'm hoping that we'll attract audiences to Bury Park to experience to do the walk, and maybe even commissioners from another area. It's got an obvious appeal to like local councils, for example. We've had support from Luton Council's Heritage Department on this. I think not least because, well, partly it's fun and imaginative, and a nice thing for everybody to get involved with, but also it can encourage footfall to those commercial districts, and we want to pin each of our stories to a different different location in Berry Park, and encourage people to go into Chai Chapati and order a cup of tea or something to eat and sit and listen to their story, and then kind of move on, so that it really becomes about interacting with the area as well, and supporting the businesses that are there.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said earlier on, there's so many, different numerous kind of businesses, places to eat, places to shop, places to buy fruit and veg. And yeah, I mean, it's, it's definitely a go-to for so many people. And I think that's what's so wonderful about Museum of Stories, that it's almost working with something that already exists, but transforming it. And in terms of perspective, like, each shop is a potential, arts venue, and each, shop owner is, suddenly is a curator, or, there's such a wonderful way, I think, of working in terms of, the project, which is, absolutely fantastic. So we are kind of nearing the end of the show. Is there anything that you'd like to just finish with? Like, again, maybe someone's still umming and eyeing, or maybe someone's, just really keen to get involved. So just maybe a last couple of kind of words from you both.
So museumofstories.co.uk, have a read, have a listen, and then the phone number, it's 01582 250 444. Landline charges normal, should be free through your mobile minutes, and take it away. I mean, don't be shy, I guess. We're a friendly team. We're here to support and help the community tell their stories. It's not a competition. If we're swamped, I'm not sure if we'll be able to call absolutely everyone back, but we will see. We had a really nice amount actually last time, and invited everyone to form a kind of community steering group. And we might do something similar to that. We might well need some volunteers as well for the walk itself, to help kind of meet and greet, welcome people, set them off on their way. So there's an opportunity to get involved on that side as well. And of course, there's audiences to come and enjoy it, to tell your friends, to really put it on social media, and as something that celebrates an area that most people, probably wouldn't, come to normally. We'd like to have a good set of audiences coming from further afield to really experience this from themselves, and off the main high street of Luton to a lesser known part, but that's just as much, if not more, interesting than the main high street.
Yeah, brilliant. No, thank you for sharing all that information. And Titilola, I think we've literally got maybe 30 seconds. So your kind of final thoughts.
Just call. Just call and take it from there.
No, definitely. I think that's definitely the best thing. Just call and share, and I think it's a wonderful opportunity. Thank you so much to both of you for your time today, for this wonderful project called Museum of Stories. I'm really, really looking forward to all the stories that are going to come out, inshallah. So yes, to the listeners, please get involved, and you can always contact Inspire FM if you need any kind of more encouragement. I'd say I will definitely, for one, be on the lookout for all the information. In the meantime, please do keep us in your du'as. Have a wonderful rest of the week, and I will be back with a new show and some new guests very, very soon, inshallah. Take care, and assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. Why not tune in to our live stream at inspirefm.org, and follow and subscribe to our social media platforms at Inspire FM Luton.